Hello and welcome to the Dr. Celia Corbo Show. I am your host, Dr. Celia Corbo, a functional health practitioner, chiropractor, and entrepreneur. On our show, we feature and showcase wonderful entrepreneurs and learn about their stories to success. Today, I have Dr. Sandy Arthur. Artist by night and chiropractor by day, SandySpines LLC started in 2017 after Dr. Sandy Arthur's first year in chiropractic school. Dr. Sandy combined her background in the arts and her love for anatomy to create SandySpines. SandySpines grew from selling art prints and stickers to classmates, to then selling online on her website and selling in person at chiropractic conventions. She has dabbled in painting murals as well. After graduating and becoming a doctor of chiropractic, Dr. Sandy still kept painting and has enjoyed being able to express her creative side even more in private practice as she opened her first chiropractic office in November 2002, Wellco Chiropractic. She specializes in active release techniques, chiropractic, and acupuncture. Hi, Dr. Sandy. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. As we were talking about before the show, your illustrations are so beautiful, and I've been following you on Instagram for such a long time, and I'm so happy that I get to now share you on my channel and with my viewers so they can learn more about you as well.
Thank you. I so appreciate
Of
it.
course. Well, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, maybe your journey into why you chose chiropractic, and then even your journey into opening up your own clinic and starting Sandy Spines?
Sure. Let's see. I've been going to a chiropractor since I was 2 weeks old.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, I've had a very on again, off again relationship with chiropractic, I'd say. But
Yeah.
for the most part, I grew up in a very like I wouldn't say totally holistic, but a very well-rounded lifestyle household.
Hmm.
And so when I was born, I had a pretty traumatic birth. So my mom took me in and I got adjusted by my childhood chiropractor. And which, especially when you're, as I've learned now, being born and how rough that process can be,
Yeah.
I severely needed an adjustment in my C2 region. So there, I've learned a lot. They're thinking back now, I've learned so much about how beneficial that is. And so when I tell people, I'm like, oh yeah, I got adjusted when I was 2 weeks old, people are like, oh my gosh, that's so, they're like, yo, do you do that? And I'm like, I don't actually specialize in children, but I do recommend it. And I always send people over to other practitioners. But I played sports throughout high school and I ended up having a lot of injuries. And then once I got into college, same thing. I just kept racking up injuries. I'm very injury prone, very clumsy. And I felt like at first I really wanted to go into the arts for my career. And I was going down this path. I was going to do interior design. I was really interested in healthcare interior design. Specifically, I wanted to get my master's in that, which is a really interesting path. And I recommend it for a lot of people that are looking to get into healthcare, but not necessarily the medical side.
Hmm.
And what happened was that I didn't like creating for certain clients and clientele. So I kind of went back. I was like, what do I actually want to do? I want to help people. Who's helped me in the past? My chiropractors, my acupuncturists, all of my healthcare providers. And so I decided to go down the path of chiropractic. And in that, I've really taken all of the things that I have learned in my practice, or I should say, as a young adult, and everything that's helped me with my chronic migraines, my herniated disc, several herniated discs, and also just overall pain. I ended up going and shadowing my chiropractor, who's currently my landlord, which is really fun.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah, it's actually awesome. It's a very full circle moment. But I just really thought to myself, this is how I want to help people. So that's when I got into chiropractic school. And I didn't leave the arts behind, but I thought I had to for a while. I was like, oh, this is a different side of me, whatever. And I don't know if there's an actual name for it, like a photographic memory, but I'm someone that has to draw while listening to lectures. Could be anything. I have a whole page of just teachers. I drew little portraits of teachers in the margins.
Oh, wow.
They actually still have them, which is pretty funny. But I found that I had a lot of people behind me because I always sat in the front row because I get easily
Yeah,
distracted.
me too.
I have, I'm like, I can't sit behind you. Your computer, whatever you're doing on computer, whatever Sudoku you're
Yeah,
playing, I can't watch it.
yeah.
So I sit in the front row and I'm always sketching. And my classmates would like say, "Oh, I really like that," or "Oh, you should sell that." And so I started painting, and just on a random break, I was like, I'm bored. I'm going to try doing some like watercolor vertebra. And so I started doing that, and then it took off, and it just, everyone really wanted it. So then I started making prints, and it just kind of started to become a business.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my classmates said, "Oh, you should call this business Sandy Spines because you're Sandy and you're a chiropractor or a chiropractic student at the time." And I was like, "That's silly, but okay." And it took off, and I just went with it. And then when did you graduate? Did you graduate?
2020.
Okay, so I graduated 2019, like right before,
Ah, okay. Oh,
in
lucky
December.
you.
I know, I know. We were like the last class, and I got a job in Charleston, South Carolina, working at another ART office.
Mm-hmm.
And I was super excited. I was like, I'm going to move there. I'm very like, I'm going to start my whole life. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to buy a new car. I'm going to do all this stuff. And then, of course, I started my job in February of 2020, and then
Okay.
March hit, right?
Yeah.
And so they still kept me on, surprisingly, but suddenly I wasn't making as much money as I thought.
Yeah.
And they kind of sort of lead you to believe that as a doctor, you're going to make this amount of money or this. And I was not making that. I was making 40 grand out of school with a bonus structure.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem was that it was now COVID, and I didn't have any like real income, and I had a very large rent, and I didn't know anybody where I was living. I had moved there from Florida originally, so that was an experience. So I really got
Yeah.
this like fire literally like under me where I said, okay, I need to make some extra money, and I started creating posters for my artwork and selling them on my own website and going off from there. And it changed the game for me. It really helped me out. And then eventually I moved back to Sarasota, where I'm from, Florida, and started in another practice. And it kept me sane during that period of time while I was working for another doctor who I very much admire as a mentor,
Mm-hmm.
but don't always work with your heroes.
Yes.
And quickly we both realized that we were not compatible. So I started my own practice in 2022, very quickly after leaving that practice in Sarasota, my hometown. And I'm now currently learning how to balance the two, because before I was always somebody else's employee. And in
Mm-hmm.
that downtime, I just would draw and like create posters, and I'd be sitting there in my little like cubicle, like typing out, short head of bicep femoris, like going through it all. Um, and now I'm like, oh crap, I have two businesses. Like I
Yeah.
have two children, and I
Yes.
have to figure out how to split my time equally.
Yeah.
And it's been a real adjustment. I'm still currently figuring it out. Um, like I'm my fiance is like, the bane of your existence is your schedule. Like I talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm still learning how to kind of balance the two of like
Mm-hmm.
when do I turn the art on and when do I be your doctor? Like
Yeah.
kind of figuring out where that is. And I do think that it's going to be a battle that I go through for the rest of my life,
Mm-hmm.
but I really enjoy what I do, and having a practice that I totally control by myself is something that I will never be anyone else's employee ever again. I'm a terrible employee.
I am right there with you. I am the worst employee ever. I knew right out of the gates that I wanted to open up my own practice,
Mm,
but like I did work as an associate, and what you said just really hit, like don't work with your heroes. And I actually worked with my chiropractor, and she is the most amazing woman and I love her. I still go I'm actually going to see her after this.
mhm.
And we just weren't compatible. We were just
Nope.
too hard-headed for each other, and we both had our own views about how to treat our patients.
Yep.
And although it's similar when we talk in the office with each other, it's still so different when we're in the same setting.
Right.
And yeah, so it's definitely true. And opening up your own practice, it's wonderful and it's beautiful. But yeah, your schedule is your boss.
Yeah. And you think to yourself, you're like, well, I do have a lot more time, but I could be doing this. I could be
Yeah.
creating social media, and I could be this, and I could be that. And I'm going through this period of time where it's like, should I hire?
Yeah.
Should I do this? I don't know. I've had two failed hires this year, and it's it's so interesting because I now look back, like when I first left the practice that I was at, the second practice that I was in,
Mm-hmm.
I was very like spiteful. Like I was just like fired up. I work really well on spite and I'm trying to work through that. I'm trying to not to do that. Uh, and so now I'm like, I understand why she did this. I
Yeah.
understand why this was painful to her. And I understand something that she said, which is she came to me, she was like, I know you're not happy
Mm-hmm.
here. My work is my happy place. This is not your happy place. You're
Mm-hmm.
ruining my happy place. And I was
Hmm.
like, and now having had like a couple failed hires, I'm like, "Ugh, I don't even know if I want to hire anyone because this is my happy place. Like this is my area.
Same.
And I'm like,
Same.
man, I have to socialize with somebody outside of my patients.
Yeah.
So I'm struggling with that currently. But it's I just love it. I love what I do. And my
Yeah.
fiance said it too. He goes, I thought you hated being a chiropractor. Turns out you just hated being somebody's employee.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. And I think there are different people out there. Like, um, how long did you work for your mentor?
Oh my goodness, I actually was on and off. So I went back
Mm.
in May of 2022, but I ended in about June of 2021. So it wasn't very long because I always had my own clinic going on in the background. So I knew leaving there wasn't going to be like a big deal, but I couldn't do it for longer because it was like a bad relationship. I wasn't happy, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally understand that. I
Yeah.
have also just done like some cortisol testing. I did like the Dutch test and everything.
Yes, we love that.
Oh, and I'm looking at my cortisol. I'm like, yeah, I really need to leave. This is really
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
And it wasn't it. And now I control my schedule, my hours. And oh my gosh, like my mom is a veterinarian to like touch back on being, growing up in a holistic household. She's like a holistic veterinarian that specializes in both
Amazing.
Eastern and Western medicine,
Wow.
does chiropractic, does acupuncture for animals and physical therapy and like all of it. And she
Mhm.
is amazing, but she has like 35 employees. And on the
Wow.
side, I also manage her website. So I've been like, I know her employees pretty well.
Yeah.
And no offense to anyone out there that might be a vet tech or knows a vet tech, but they can be a bit dramatic. And I'm
Yeah.
like, but so can front desk. Like,
Mhm.
and anyone that
Yes.
you hire can be dramatic.
Yes.
So I'm trying to figure this like, do I really want to have this dramatic natured person come in
Yeah.
and be in my space? So
Yeah.
I'm in the in between right now,
Yeah.
in this weird growth phase, and like right now both businesses are doing like about the same, and I'm like, okay, which one are we gonna push forward
Yeah.
next? So I would say
I think
it's
that's the tricky
hard.
part because I had another clinic that I was running maybe about 30 minutes outside of where I am right now. So I had
Yeah.
two locations and I wasn't sure which one I wanted to push. Like,
Hmm.
and it was very much the same as you. You're kind of in this like between a rock and a hard place. You're like, do I go with art? Do I go with
Yes.
chiropractic? Like, and then long term, which one is going to be the one that I want to go with more? But
Right.
I think you still can do both.
I think I can do both too because the only problem that I'm recognizing, this is something I've realized recently. One, I have to journal.
Yeah.
I have to journal all my feelings because I tend to use my fiance as a sounding board, and I'm like, let's stop doing that. But I've been journaling it out, and I'm like, I love the art because I love being creative. I
Yeah.
love the creative output. I love creating pretty things for people, and like most especially, I love creating pretty useful things. Like if
Mhm.
you have something on your wall that you can use to describe to a patient where
Yeah.
exactly their issue is, I love that. But I don't get the socialization. And
Mhm.
then it's like I come into the office and I see patients. I do active release specifically. So a lot of my patients come in. It's 20 minutes.
Mhm.
So it's a lot longer than a lot of people, and I don't do the
Mhm.
5 minute in and out thing. But I see them once a week, and I know, how's your grandmother doing? Like, I
Yeah.
know everything about them, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of that stuff does tie in because I'm asking, their day to day.
Yeah.
And it is so nice to have like a nice consistent schedule of like 12 people, and then
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah.
But the art is like, I can do it anywhere. I
Yes.
can, so it is a bit hard, especially when you go on vacation and I'm still able to put orders in, but then it's like, I can't see patients. And then people are texting me being like, hey, where are you? And I'm like, oh no.
So how do you then find this really, I know you're still working on it, like you
Mhm.
mentioned, but how do
Mhm.
you find that happy place on either a daily, weekly, or monthly basis where
Mhm.
you're like, I'm content with what I'm doing. I know my schedule is full,
Mhm.
but you know, I know how to manage myself. How do you do
Right.
that?
Currently, I feel like it's an evolving question.
Yeah.
Um, Currently, because it's summer and it's slower here in Florida, we have seasons with
Yeah.
people coming in. So my snowbirds, I'm
Yes.
like, okay,
A lot
yeah,
of a lot of
okay,
Torontonians are
mm,
heading down to Florida.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. I'm like, okay, I'll see you in November, or I'll see you in
Yeah.
December, and I just like feel that because it's slower, it's not
Hmm.
actually that much slower, but because it is slower, I've actually taken Tuesdays and Thursdays and like for the most part taken those days off.
Amazing.
The reason I did that was because I have two grandmothers, one is 98 and one is 91. So,
Wow, God bless. That's amazing.
right. And one of them, she has dementia. And so I'm trying to spend a lot of time with her. I'm the only grandchild
Hmm.
that's in town. So I take her out to lunch on Thursdays. And then on Tuesdays, I go to my other grandmother's house and she is really into genealogy. And she calls me up one day. She's like, if you don't come over here and take all these notes, I'm just going to die. And like, no one will have these. I was like, okay, dramatic. But all right. So Tuesdays I go to her, Thursdays I go to my other grandmother. And it's been helpful too because I've able to kind of schedule my life accordingly and
Yep.
knowing that by the time I get back to, I think I've planned it in August when school starts again. I'll go back to like 4 days a week. I'll still
Yeah.
have Thursdays off. So that's supposed to be like my appointment slash art day.
Hmm.
And then I just kind of create things as I go. Currently, I may have like a studio space opening up, which will be really nice. So
Ooh, very nice.
I can just leave all of my mess
Yeah.
because I currently live in a two-bedroom apartment and my
Yep.
fiance works from home. So, it's hard to figure out where to be. So if I
Hmm.
have that open, I will have a studio space and I'm going to come into the office. I'm very good if I'm in an office space, if I'm in a dedicated
Yeah.
workspace. But if I'm at home, it's really hard for me.
Yeah.
So currently, to answer your question of like how to balance it, I just know that I will consistently bring in a certain amount of income with the chiropractic side.
Hmm.
So I've been like, okay, get it to this consistency and then start like just if you can keep it there, I'm
Hmm.
pretty happy.
Yeah.
So I think right now I'm very content with the growth of it. And then with the artwork, I'm like, all right, we need to spend some more time doing it.
Hmm.
Now there are some weekends where it's like, okay, I'm working all Saturday on the artwork or I'm working into the night. So it
Yeah.
and I'll tell my fiance, I'm like, it's an art night. I gotta do, search engine optimization. I have to do
Hmm.
all of this stuff. So that's like not the fun part, but like the back end of it that I know
Yeah.
will be good for me in the future.
Yeah.
And it's it's still like it's going well currently.
Hmm.
But I also I'm so roundabout with this, by the way. I have a certain um flow that I have to get into.
Yeah.
So once I get creative, it's a roller coaster and I'm going to keep going and then it will cut off.
Hmm.
So if I get creative, I have to take advantage of it. Otherwise I won't finish.
I,
So
I totally understand that. It's like you're in the
yeah,
zone and you have
I'm
to
in
just
the zone.
stay in the zone until you're no longer in the zone, but you don't really know when that's going to happen.
Mhm.
And so you have to really take advantage of every moment.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's the one thing I've had recently, is the way my schedule has been is difficult because I thought that I could switch to longer days.
Hmm.
But I actually am so exhausted by the end of the long day that I don't want to do anything the next day.
Yeah.
So I'm still the bane of my existence, still figuring it out. But
Yeah.
I do think eventually, just because ART is really hard on your hands and
Hmm.
chiropractic is really hard, and there is a certain shelf life that you do have.
Yeah.
Um, and I love acupuncture, but there's something to be said about pushing the art forward because it is a little bit more sustainable for the long run.
Hmm.
And I'm always like, things are always popping up in my brain. I'm like, oh, this is a really cool idea. I just don't have time to execute it. Like,
Hmm.
oh. So
Yeah.
I'm still working on finding that balance, and also, maintaining a good love life, and like going to the gym 4 days a week,
And
and
still
like
being
all these,
you.
and it's like a social life, and I just turned 30. So for me, it's like this whole, and I'm wedding planning, and it's like this whole thing. And you're just like, oh my gosh, like this is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
I just went through all of that, and it's a lot. I wish you good luck. Your wedding
I'm,
planning.
I'm I'm fighting over a guest list right now. That's just
Oh
really,
yeah.
but you know what? It creates great banter with clients because
Yes,
I'm talking to
absolutely.
clients, and I'm like, they're like,
Absolutely.
so what's your stress this week? And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, the venue can only hold 200, and I'm like, oh, but
That's
it
too
is,
popular.
yeah. I'm like, this is so much, and a lot of it is, whenever I'm working, people are like, well, how do you do both? And I'm like, I need both. Because
Yes.
once, if I get tired, if I'm like, I'm so over patience right now, I'm so
Yeah.
over, the Karens, the whatever,
Yeah.
I need to go to the artwork and
Yeah.
kind of get into it a little bit.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of it does come down to routines.
Yeah,
If I have
absolutely.
that going on for myself, then
Yeah.
I'm able to accomplish both and really work with it. Uh,
Yeah.
so it's a balancing art, really.
I It really is. And I think that's one of the things or one of the topics that no one really prepares you for. And I'm not going to blame school, but that's where you learn how to become a chiropractor and where you're learning your skills, your art of adjusting and
Mhm.
your technique. Yet they don't really teach you anything about entrepreneurship. They teach you how to be a really good employee, how to be an associate, how to,
Mhm.
work within the confines of an office, ask the right questions when someone's hiring. But what would you say now that you've been on both sides of an associate and as an entrepreneur? As an entrepreneur, what would you say is something that you would share with someone opening up a chiropractic clinic or starting up a business that you didn't receive upon doing it yourself?
Um, Advice that I didn't receive.
That you
I
wish you
think,
had gotten?
oh, you know, I wish I had done more interviewing of the people that were interviewing me,
Yeah.
because I, the first job, I love them. They're wonderful people, but I didn't barter for more,
Yeah.
which, as a hiring person, I'm looking at, how much do you pay somebody as a independent contractor versus a associate, and what's the startup
Mhm.
cost? And so now I'm looking at, I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. But I didn't get a lot of like support in terms of marketing myself. It
Mhm.
was like, you're here to take on my extra load. You are not
Yeah.
here to develop your own practice. You're here to take on the people. So I really struggled with this. I was always second best, or like best case scenario, or like next best thing, you can see Dr. Sandy,
Yeah.
or, worst case scenario. Oh, I hated that one. Worst case scenario, you can see Dr. Sandy. I was like, I am their best case scenario, not their worst case scenario.
Oh my god, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And I was
Yeah.
like, but
Yeah.
I would say that was something that I really wish I had done. Like, I did a ton of shadowing in school,
Mhm.
which I recommend for all the students that come in and shadow me. I'm like, please, like, go shadow other places. Like, I
Mhm.
really recommend it. Like, I practice very differently from Dr. Joe down the street.
Yeah.
And I think, but the thing I didn't know was to really ask questions about what your schedule is like, and
Mhm.
how do they work, and what kind of person are they. I think I make a good entrepreneur because I'm the person that you give an assignment to, and it takes 5 hours, but I do it in two.
Yeah.
But I do it right in two. But I'm like,
Yeah.
my thought process is, if I do it in two and I do it right and well, I get to leave early.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm like, or I get to work on something that I want to work on, which
Yeah.
I think makes me a good entrepreneur in the fact that I get to do it in two, and then I get to start something else to further my business, because
Yeah.
it's all benefiting me selfishly. But
Yep.
you, when you go into that thought process, when you're working for somebody else, if you do it in two, they're like, oh, great, here's more work. And I've
Yeah.
never been good at that. So you really have to think about yourself. Like, do you want to have a sort of life structure that is okay with not being
Mhm.
the lead, or, that person that makes decisions? Like, I really wanted to do social media, and both of my jobs were like, no social media. And I was like, oh my gosh, my
Really?
other
That's
job,
so surprising.
none. I did it all.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I tried to convince him, and nope, not a fan.
Yeah.
But I feel like I just had so much of that. You get out of school and you're like, I'm gonna be the best and all this other stuff,
Fire. Yeah.
all this fire, and then you like get worn down, and then you're like, ah, this sucks. And then I go to the next job and I'm like, I'm gonna be the best. This is so exciting. And then you get worn down again. And I'm like, this sucks, you know? So I
Yeah.
do think that you have to vet them as much as they're trying to vet you,
Yeah.
and that you're investing in them and they're investing in you. But ultimately, thinking about being an associate, you're there to make them money.
Yeah.
So, which is brutally, that's what it is.
Yeah.
But I do feel like if I ever hire an associate, my goal is to make sure that they're happy
Hmm.
and healthy and not going to burn out. And your happiness is probably one of my highest priorities
Yeah.
as a boss.
Yeah.
And work life balance has to be good, you know. And I've had some people, like, I interviewed somebody and they were just like, I'm going to be a workhorse, like I'm going to do this. I'm like, that's great, but you know, I can see where you're falling through the cracks. Like,
Hmm.
what about work life balance?
Yeah.
And it just wasn't a good fit. So,
Yeah.
but I believe, like, in the future I want to have providers that surround me, that our focus is not just the patient but also the provider,
Hmm.
because your health matters. And if you're not performing at the best,
Yeah.
then how are you able to care for others? And if I hire you, you are a direct reflection of me. So that's the big thing. I would really question students. Be like, you need to vet the employers. You need to, what is their life like?
Yeah.
Are you just there to fill in cracks, or are you there to like actually be a part of the team?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's there's so many people looking for associates and nobody's hiring. Like,
Well,
nobody wants to be hired.
you know what I find it is, because even for myself, like I would love to go on maternity leave, but being
Mm,
an entrepreneur, you don't get
yeah,
maternity leave
no,
because you're your own boss, and I don't have those benefits for myself.
right,
And
right,
you know, who's going to take over my practice when I'm not there? And
right.
because chiropractic is one of those things where you are so different than Dr. Joe down the street, it's finding that associate or that person to bring onto your team that will really understand your message and how you're trying to heal people in a different way.
Mhm.
And obviously they're going to put their own spin on it because everyone is
Right.
different, but
Everyone's
it's
different.
hard to find someone that really, really gets it the way you get it. And I think that's why, because even for myself, I've had two associates in my practice, both chiros,
Mhm,
and they're amazing people. Don't get me wrong,
mhm.
but it just wasn't the same. It wasn't the right
Right,
fit. And that
right.
is really difficult. So now, as an entrepreneur, if you are in the midst of hiring for your clinic,
Mhm.
what's something apart from the work life balance? What is another thing that you look for with your future associate that you would love to have in your clinic to make it that beautiful, happy place that you want it to be?
Um, I keep saying this, no drama llamas. Like, I am not, I'm, I, tr- I think past me would have been dramatic.
Yeah.
Current me is like, you're exhausting. Like, I have
Yeah.
so many other things, and I don't even do well with dramatic clients. So I think the big thing is understanding that I'm not out to eat my young, basically.
Yeah.
But I do expect high level performance from
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And that is hard right now to get people to want to invest. And recently I just had a meeting with some potential investors into like a couple different ideas. And they had presented the idea of giving ownership to the associates or contractors. And
Okay.
I was like, I've never even thought about that before.
Yeah, this is new to me too.
Because I had been offered potential to buy into ownership with my first job. And I was like,
Hmm.
I'm not going to stay here. I probably won't do that.
Yeah.
But they were saying you want to train people and keep them, give them ownership so they don't just leave you. And I
Hmm.
thought, oh, because I've also thought this, where I went through a job hiring process for a different company. And I was like, I'm going to go through their training and I'm literally going to stay for a year and I'm going to leave because they're not in my ideal location.
Yeah.
Because that was my mindset, because I'm supposed to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And that I was like, oh, if I would want people to buy in, or not even buy in, give them part ownership. If
Yeah.
you show up, if you think about it like a business structure, like a traditional business structure, you're giving them vested interest if they stay on for 3 years, they get like 10%, 15% or whatever. And I don't come from a strong business background in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
My fiance does. So he's like, he always says this. He's like, you chiropractors are terrible business owners.
Oh
Like,
my God,
he's
we
like, you,
suck.
and I'm like, I understand that, but we didn't learn this. It's exactly what you said.
Yeah.
I talked to some teachers I went to Palmer, Florida, and I talked to some teachers and they were like, yeah, we're not supposed to make you business owners. I'm like, but why? You
Yeah.
like, what else are we supposed to do? And I know we had like, I don't know, three classes of business.
Yeah, it's very minimal. I'll even at CMCC, they have the business classes, but they're minimal. Then
Mhm.
they have additional like business club and things like that, which I never
Right.
did. I'm like, I
No,
have
yeah,
to
never.
study.
I was like, I'm not
Yeah,
going to do that. I'm
yeah,
going to go to soft tissue club where I can actually learn things. And I was like, no.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, I do. I think for the future, like I have this beautiful vision of what I want. And
yeah,
it kind of combines both the art, the interior design, and everything together. And I want to create a location. I call it, it's like, it's almost like this co-op of sorts.
yeah.
And I really want that because I value provider, like the care of the providers, meaning I value the person having really good mental health.
Yes.
Because there's a weird, I don't know if this exists everywhere, but there's a very weird wellness, I call it the wellness girly toxic lifestyle.
Okay, elaborate.
Uh, like they're, they were maybe the mean girls in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they were the girls that were super popular and now they're rediscovering themselves and defining their root chakra and they're like they're doing the yoga, they're doing the wellness retreats,
The smoothie blends.
the smoothie blends, but they are so full of it and I'm like, I don't want that. I
Yeah.
And it's funny because my massage therapist is hilarious. She's like, I was telling her about my thoughts about this toxic wellness girl trend. And she's like, well, thank you. Welcome to my side of the lunchroom. The lunch table is empty. Feel free to sit anywhere.
It
We're
is.
here.
Yeah.
And I feel that strongly because when I go in and talk to people, I'm super blunt. Like, I'm like, hey,
Same.
you want to
Me
be
too.
friends? Like, you
Yeah.
want to hang out? Like, I love like what you're doing. Your social media is amazing, but I'm not looking to like gain something from you. I'm literally looking for friendship. Like, I'm a
Yeah.
little golden retriever. I'm like, hey, hey, hey. And people, they don't know how to react to that because they're waiting for me to like want something from me. Or
Yeah.
it's like as a chiropractor, I'm sure you have people that reach out and they're like, "Hey girl, you know, you want to like go hang out?" And I'm just like, "Actual friendship or
Yeah.
do you just want something from me?"
Yeah.
So I'm really trying to negate that effect. I really want to have a brand, a space for people so that maybe not as an associate, but maybe as a independent contractor can come in and be like a part and buy into it. And they don't
Mm-hmm.
even have to practice like me. I do want somebody who does things like me
Yeah.
for maternity leave purposes and all the things you stated earlier. But a lot of people are like, oh, you're crazy. Like it's never going to happen. And I said, what if though you did go through the toxic work life culture and you came out of
Mm-hmm.
it and you're like, I don't want to do this. And you're
Yeah.
looking for a place to rent to start your business. And I have a beautiful spot. Like
It
the
is.
vibe.
Even the painting behind you is gorgeous.
That's
I
my
know you did that yourself.
that's my guy.
Gorgeous.
But I was like, imagine if like I hate to use these terminology because I sound so Gen Z when I say it like this, but it's like if the vibes were immaculate, if the lighting is beautiful, I don't have this,
Mm-hmm.
lovely, like
Shield lighting. Yes.
Mhm. And to me, I feel like if I was able to create the space, like if you create it, they will come kind of deal. But
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
specifically thinking about providers because I want them to have a safe place to practice where
Yeah.
it's like they don't have to feel uncomfortable with, maybe somebody else that's renting in there, or
Mm-hmm.
they feel like they have to wear one of those necklaces that you can call 911 with. I just want it to feel safe.
Yeah.
Being someone I've experienced situations where I felt very unsafe and I always leave
Mm-hmm.
my door open now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm talking about getting a camera for my front just to be sure, but I
Yeah.
have other people in the building that I trust. So
Yeah.
I just want it to be both safe for the provider and for the client. And I think that'll create like a wonderful like situation.
For sure.
But a lot of people are like, that's a lot of work. I'm like, it is a lot of work.
It's a lot. Like there's a lot of hats as an entrepreneur and as a business
Mhm,
owner, clinic owner, chiropractor, accountant, receptionist.
mhm,
There's a lot of hats that you have to wear. And it's exhausting if you don't know how to balance the energies within you. And it can lead to that burnout, the blockages, all of the things. But at the same time, building that team is
mhm.
why we want to give a hat maybe to somebody else, or we want
Right.
to be able to have that better balance and offload some of our own tasks. Because, yeah, like burnout is real, even among practitioners.
Oh,
And
horrible.
how do you deal with burnout? Because I know for me physically, like I have a disc herniation in my neck that I got with
Mhm,
practicing. I've
mm,
had back pain. I've had everything being a
mhm.
chiropractor in my short
Yep, yep, yep,
career so far.
yep.
So how do you handle all of that for our future chiropractors or our present chiropractors listening in? Like, how would you go about getting that burnout to be a little bit more leveled?
Physically, I see my acupuncturist, my massage therapist.
Yeah.
My landlord is my chiropractor from when I was in high school. So he and I adjust each other.
Yeah.
Um, I'm really big in that self-care. And then I also have an old coworker who does active release on me as well. So, because I'm constantly using my hands. So for me, I need work all the time.
Yeah.
It's just general upkeep. I will fall apart if I don't have that.
Same. Yeah.
I also have a personal trainer that I see. He's a friend of mine. And he is great because he refers a lot of business to me.
Mhm.
But I literally told him, I said, we've been working together on and off for 7 years. And I said, I need my grip strength to be strong. I
Yeah.
need to not be so sore that I cannot move a patient. My SI joints need to be stable. All of it, we do a lot of rotation work.
Mhm.
And I work out by myself too. But having him to hold me accountable 1 or 2 times a week has been a necessary expense. I like it's
Yeah,
expensive,
absolutely.
but it was like, having that thought process, I'd rather have somebody help me
Yeah.
and stay strong. No matter what kind of chiropractic you do, I really feel like you have to, because at some point you're going to lift a patient wrong and it's like
Yes.
dreadful.
It has happened.
Yep,
I know I'm not the only one.
yep. Or it's like a patient falls off the table and you're like, ah, what did you do?
That hasn't happened yet to me, thank God. But I get
I
that
had
question a lot.
one.
Like, am I gonna fall? I'm like, you're fine.
Oh yeah, that happens all the time. And I'm like, I had one guy, he flipped himself over like a seal. Like he just like flipped and he just flipped himself right at the table. I was like, thank God the table was low. Because
Yeah.
I thought to myself, I was like, oh God. Um,
Yeah.
but I think in terms of avoiding burnout mentally, I'm still, this is always a work in progress. Like I always tell people, I was like, take everything with a grain of salt, but I'm a big journaler.
Mhm.
And I mentioned this earlier, how if I journal it, I can actually follow my train of thought.
Mhm.
Don't actually think I have ADHD, but I tend to do this thing where I just like spiral around. Like I'll keep
Yeah.
circling the drain. So if I journal it out, I can come to my final point.
Mhm.
I want to start therapy again. So I've had I had a therapist that I worked with when I was living during COVID, when I was living in Charleston, and she changed my life.
Amazing.
She made me realize I had to move back to Sarasota. She really made me realize I wanted to be back by family. And I honestly, like, I thank her. I send her occasional emails every once in a while. I was like,
Mhm.
I found a great man. Thank you so much. And all this stuff. But she really helped me.
Yeah.
And it was nice to have somebody to talk to that didn't have a vested interest in who I am as a person.
Mhm.
So having therapy was amazing. I got very lucky with the first therapist I ever found. I have yet to find one that I've really clicked with quite yet.
Yeah.
So I'm getting there. But I recommend therapy to every person that comes into my office.
Yeah.
I'd love to have a therapist that works in my office eventually, because I feel like you get these people coming in, you're like, oof,
It's you kind of become a therapist as the
right.
chiropractor because they're talking to you when they're on the table or they're sharing about their week, the subjective part of the
Hmm.
appointment. And
Hmm.
sometimes I get into therapist mode and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this, if I can handle this. And it's a lot, right?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
usually say, you see those 2 degrees back there? I only have two.
Yeah.
So I think you need to go see somebody that's professional. But truly though, and I always say, I, I really need to have, I think I'm working towards having better accountability for myself too, where
Mhm.
it's like, okay, we're getting up earlier. We're
Yes.
doing the things that make us feel good. Like I know that I will wake up at 6. I don't like to work out that early in the morning, but I feel really good if I do something good for myself. And
Yeah.
for me, productivity does equal self-care.
Mm-hmm.
So I have my checklist, I have my planner, I've got my quarterly goals, my weekly goals, like all the things. But I also find that sometimes I just have to take a step back and like
Yeah.
go walk on the beach, go touch grass. Like
Oh, I love
it's
that you can do that.
yeah, it really is. It's like I'll tell my fiance, I'm like, I need to go see a sunset. Like
Yeah.
I need to go do something. And I'm sure like there's a lot of places out there I feel that just going into a park and sitting down,
Yeah.
you do need to do that. But a lot of that burnout, when it happens, it's happened to me twice. I don't know about you,
Mm-hmm.
but I've been burned out, and I did a large art project, and all I wanted to do was just scream. I was like, this is awful. I'm burnt out. I don't want to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I have realized, at least with the art, I'd say, which I guess could tie into entrepreneurship, is watching how much energy I give to others
Yes.
and not receiving in return. And that goes for not just business, but also friendships and things like that. So
Yeah.
weeding out, kind of figuring out who is actually beneficial for me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like in your 30s, you definitely your friend group gets smaller and smaller.
I think
And
it's because you start to understand who you are more and more. And it's just, we have all this energy within us, but we want to spend it really wisely because we are giving so much to our careers, our families, our bills that we have to pay. Like we have so much more that we have to give to that we can't give to people who are just going to take and not give back.
right. And
Yeah.
we give to patients all day long.
Yes.
And so I get home, I was like, I don't even want to touch. Like, I don't want to touch anybody. I don't want to
Mhm.
see anybody.
Yep.
So I do really appreciate having friends that also can understand that.
Yeah.
Um, but overall, I feel like I've come a long way in terms of my mental health and trying to keep my business practice separately.
Hmm.
Um, and really creating that separation because
Yeah.
it does come up on you and it sneaks up on you. And the one thing that I do appreciate, and I always advise to students, chiropractors, anyone, is having
Hmm.
hobbies. Having hobbies
Yes.
that have nothing to do with what you're doing
Yep.
professionally.
Yep.
Because I do have some friends that all they do is chiropractic, and I'm like, man,
How? How
that's
are you
it.
doing that?
That's it. I'm like, okay. And I mean,
Yeah.
it could be anything. Could be crochet. I do have a friend who's a chiropractor. She just picked up pottery making on a wheel,
Ooh, yeah.
which is actually someone told her that as a chiropractor, because she's got such good touch, that pottery making is actually good for her.
That's actually,
So
I want to try that now.
I was like, I so
Yeah.
want to do this. Also want to make my own cups.
Yeah.
But she actually made me. I have a cup on my desk, and she was one of her first mugs, and I use it for my acupuncture needles. So I put all my needles in there.
Ooh, love
Um,
that.
it's very cute, and I think you should have hobbies, like
Yeah.
whether it's reading books or whatever. But honestly, people just get so wrapped up, and they're just like, "I'm here. This is all I see." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"There's so much more to life. Like you could be really into birding. I don't know, like
Yeah.
really into photography."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that living in the present moment is so, it can be very difficult to master because when you're running your own show, when you have patients that you need to chart for or take care of, or you have clients that you need to make them their artwork for by a certain deadline, it's so easy to put the blinders on and just look at those deadlines. And you're not really enjoying the whole moment of
Mhm.
what's really going on. And so my next question for you is, how do you find that inspiration with your art? I
Mhm.
want to talk a little bit more about your art because it is so beautiful.
Thank you.
So where do you draw on that inspiration when you have those blinders on or when you are feeling in these moments of just like the stuckness? How do you draw on nature or your own hobbies to get to where you need to be?
Um, Super interesting because I'm going through that right now.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out what my next venture is.
Mhm.
The short answer is sketching
Mhm.
because I'm just like out there doodling. The long answer is I tend to get burnt out with certain things. So right now it's pretty much anything anatomy. I'm like, I'm tired. I don't really want to do this. But then I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, well, what do I want to do? And it's like, well, I love going to coffee shops. It's like one of my favorite little side hobbies. I like to go to coffee shops. I like to get a little coffee. And I started doing a lot of coffee and like skeleton artwork, which are super popular and
I saw they're
students,
so fun.
they're really fun. And I'm trying to change up my style a little bit because I'm like, okay, because sometimes you get stuck in comparison mode.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, I just had this conversation recently. It was like, my artwork is nice. It doesn't photograph well. And everyone's like, no, it does. I was like, well, I think I'd like to change it up a little bit and change out how I do things. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
always looking to evolve in some way. That's how the murals came about and just like trying those out and trying different medias. But sometimes it is like just about trying something totally different. I think it's in this book. Um, it's called Big Magic. It's by Elizabeth Gilbert.
Okay.
It's absolutely my favorite book.
I need to write
Um,
that down because I'm gonna
you-
forget and I want to put it in the show notes.
she wrote Eat, Pray, Love.
Oh,
So
okay. Okay,
she
yeah.
is writes this whole book and it's about creative living.
Ooh,
And
okay.
I think it's beneficial for everyone to read, not just people who are naturally creative, but also in terms of burnout,
Mm-hmm.
because she talks a lot about, if you're an athlete and you've fallen out of love with soccer, it's your professional soccer player, you've fallen out of love with soccer. And so you're like, well, I'm going to pick up baseball. I'm going to try baseball. Like, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
good at it, but I'm going to try it. Or I'm going to do
Mm-hmm.
golf, something like that. And then you like find out, you're like, wow, actually, golf is really fun. And you're just doing it. You're like, you have no expectation of how good you're going to be. And then you eventually are like, well, you know what? I kind of want to play soccer again. And you go back to playing soccer. And suddenly you find like this love all
Mm-hmm.
over again. And I think that's what it comes down to for me is sometimes like what you're good at, you then have an expectation to how it's going to perform. And
Yeah.
this happens in social media a lot too, where it's like, oh, I think this is going to be good. And it doesn't perform, or people don't really love it, or it doesn't sell well. And it's like, ugh. So then I try something totally new and different. I'm like, I'm just going
Mm-hmm.
to do something abstract and play with it. And then
Mm-hmm.
everyone loves it. And I'm like, okay. So then I kind of start to develop it into a style. And it takes a lot of time because it takes some experimentation. So
Mm-hmm.
this is what I meant when I was in the middle of it. I just ordered 2 new sketchbooks. One's like just a regular pen to paper sketchbook, and the other
Mm-hmm.
one is a watercolor sketchbook. And I just told myself, I was like, I have no expectations. I'm not planning on sharing these sketches. I want to do whatever I want.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've been kind of playing with the idea of doing like I've been reading a lot. I've been reading a lot of like book talk books or whatever. So more fantasy series.
Okay.
Maybe I should just do some like fantasy art, like for fun. Like that would be kind of cool. And I could
Yeah.
still incorporate in some of the anatomy if I wanted to. Um, but it's not meant for anybody else but me. So that's somehow a way for me to get back into the arts, to try something new and like get into a new technique. And I
Mm-hmm.
guess I can apply to chiropractic too, or pretty much anything. I
Yeah.
feel very fired up after a seminar sometimes. We're
Oh,
just like,
same. Oh my goodness.
I can't
Absolutely.
wait to implement this.
Yep.
And every year I get this where I'm like, oh, kind of bored. And then I do a new seminar and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. So I will say that I feel like the art applies the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And in Big Magic, the book, it's just phenomenal at talking about how like burnout and the flow is and how you should treat yourself to, she has a whole section where she talks about people getting ready.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't create art in my pajamas. I have to get ready for the
Yes.
process.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. And I
Yeah.
also, like I said earlier about having a designated office, that's
Mm-hmm.
part of it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to work. I have to
Yeah.
do this. And
Yeah.
it's all experimentation. Right now I say transcribing because it's all handwritten. I'm transcribing out my grandmother's notebooks. She's an artist. And the
So it's in the
98.
genes.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
She did so much abstract art. So a lot of
Okay.
the abstract art in my front office is all hers. And she has like in her notebooks, you apply the paint and then you spray a cleaning product of some sort, or it's like Tilex, and you're like, Tilex. And then she writes these notes down, but it creates patterns. It creates like this experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a big abstract person, but I feel like if I take her artwork and just play,
Mm-hmm.
that will guide me into a new outlook and a new way of how I want to continue my artwork. Because sometimes I'll get into comparison mode and I'm like, well, I'm not like this artist, and I'm not like this artist. And I'm like, well, I want to be more like that. And it's like, but I'm unique. I'm in my own
Yeah.
little realm. So I'm trying not to get to keeping up with the Joneses, if you will.
I think that's a really difficult thing to do for some people because with
Mm,
social media, with the internet being just at our fingertips, you can just fall into that, oh, I'm not good enough mentality, or oh my God, they did this so well. I should try doing that. It doesn't look the same. And it's really about just staying true to who you are and
mhm.
just really, going with the flow of what's inspiring you in that moment. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
100%. And it's chasing like ideas. Like I get
Yeah.
ideas all the time. I'll write them down. I'm a big, like, if I walk, I am going to get an idea. If I go for a run or something like
Yeah.
that, which is rare, but if I go for a run or a walk, like,
If you move the
yeah,
body.
if I move, yeah, I'm trying to continually take down notes and stuff like that, and like little
Yeah.
inspirations. I've been doing this thing. If I listen to podcasts or books, I have a page in my Notion where I pull it up and I write down the quote immediately. I'm like, this is a
Mhm.
great quote.
Yeah.
Um, Trying to find the inspiration. And I feel like a lot of my content that I consume these days is all about burnout and, trying to make your life more efficient.
Mhm.
Um, because it's so real, and especially when you're listening to other entrepreneurs talk about their creative journey. And I
Yeah.
listen to fashion designers, I listen to authors. Like, I find that it's not a specifically, like, I'm probably one of those few chiropractors. I consume very little chiropractic content, I feel like, these days,
Yeah.
but I also consume very little, I would say, traditional art content, like
Mhm.
my art. um, I literally go out and find, like, I'm not a writer really. I find the writers. I go and I find like the people, the clothing designers. I find people fascinating. I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
even know anything about merchandise, like sales management, and all this stuff. You go, where do you go to China and you make? But I find it fascinating, and but what they talk about with burnout is so real, and it's
Mhm.
everyone handles it a little bit differently. And I think that's really the human experience, right? You
Yeah.
are a different person no matter what you do. For me, like, I do the Pomodoro method where I set a
Yeah.
timer on my phone, 45 minutes, can't pick up my phone until then.
Mhm.
And that doesn't work for some people. But for
Yeah.
me, it's amazing. I'm like, I have 15 minutes, clean my kitchen 15 minutes. Like,
Yeah.
just like keep going.
Yeah.
And kind of on that note, my mental state is directly linked to the state of my kitchen. If my house is a mess, if my house
Same.
disaster, I'm like,
Yep.
I just need 15 minutes. And my old roommate in college and I used to call it tornadoing. I was like, I'm just going to tornado for a second. I'm just going
Yeah.
to tornado through his house and like clean it all up. And it may not be perfect, but it's at least like
It
the
does
first
something
layer.
to your brain. Like even before we jumped on the podcast, I'm like, "Oh my God, I just need to clean the kitchen," honestly.
Yep.
And then I was like, "I just need to
Yep.
tidy up. I just need to wipe down the surfaces." Like, I don't know, but I felt so good. I felt so accomplished after that. And I
Mhm.
was like, "Okay, I can sit down now. I can
Mhm.
do some work, have the podcast with Dr. Sandy. I can go now about my
Mhm.
day." It just does something
Mhm.
amazing to your brain.
That's why I talked about waking up early. Like, I'm a terrible morning person. But if I wake up and I'm up, if I'm doing something productive, it does not have to be the gym, but it's like, okay,
Yeah.
walk the dog, clean up the kitchen, prep my lunch,
Yeah.
done. Like,
Yeah.
that's all I need. And I'm in such a better mood throughout the day.
Yeah.
And so I find that affects, I mean, it affects both businesses, right? Like, if I
For
can just
sure.
start that creative flow early, maybe, or,
Mhm.
I'm also someone that works well, back to scheduling, the bane of my existence. I work really well in blocks of time,
Yeah.
which doesn't always work for a patient schedule.
Yeah.
But I kind of do either 8 to 2 or 1 to 6, and I alternate that in my schedule for seeing patients,
Mhm.
because I lose focus with people where I'm like, if I'm working from 8 to 5, I'm like, I'm
You just
ready to be done.
you kind of burn out. right?
Yeah.
Your mental stamina, your physical stamina, it just starts to slowly decline. And then you're like, oh, God, I have to keep going now.
Like, if I
Right.
have to hear one more time about your trap that is like, I was like, why do I have a knot in my trap? I was like, oh my God, I have to hear that one more time. But it's so true because like you do have to deal with like the everyday person,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that happens with the art world too. I get questions all the time, and I'm like, and people are like, well, how, it's like, are these framed? I'm like, no, because if you looked in the description, they don't come framed. Or it's the simple things.
Yeah.
And so I've really learned that like from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m., I'm really productive with the artwork. From 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., I'm really productive with the artwork. Everything in between, not so much. So in that regard, like I've really learned like I could still continue to work, but my
Mhm.
most beneficial hours are these hours.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing I've learned for students studying wise. That was I
Mhm.
learned that in chiropractic school. I could study for boards all day,
Yeah.
and then I'd have nothing done.
Yeah.
Or I could study from 7 a.m. to 9 or 7 a.m. to 10, and then I can go do something else on the weekend and explore and have fun. And then I come back and I study from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And
Yeah.
I would get just as much, if not more, done while still having the rest of my day. No guilt, nothing.
Yeah.
Like, that was my biggest thing with students. It was like, find the hours you're productive. Like, you can't
Yes,
always control that.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now with both of your businesses, what
Hmm.
would you say has been your most successful story to date? Because for me, when I think about Sandy Spines, I think about that time, which I don't know if I'm gonna sound super creepy because I've been following you for so long, but when you got flown out to do that beautiful mural in
Yeah.
Hawaii, I was like, oh my goodness, good for her. I was like, this is amazing. So that's my success story for you.
Yeah.
But what has been your best or your most successful story?
Ooh, you know what? I would say for Sandy Spine specifically, I think when I wowed my CPA.
Huh.
I think that I know this is very like numerical, business
No,
minded.
but that's part of business, right? Yeah.
So my CPA, for a little background, he was my grandfather's best friend. So he's older.
Hmm.
Um, and he's the closest I'll ever get to being around my grandfather again, basically. And for me, like I am 30 years old and I still look forward every year. It sounds so silly, but he like gives me either like a legitimate pat on the head or he gives me like a mental pat on the head, basically. But he's like, good job.
Yeah.
Like you did it. And to some people, I think that would sound very like demeaning or anything like that. But to me, it's like, I've been praised and I love praise. So
Yeah.
he, because I was showing him my numbers and for a while, I was doubling every year, like my sales, and I
Amazing.
was learning. And now I'm learning a lot about taxes. So, and like all of
So
my
fun.
American taxes and love it. Um, but every year I was doubling. I hit a point. I told him, I said to him last year, I was like, I didn't double this year. And he's like, that's okay. If you doubled, I'd be truly like, I'd be blown away. And then this past year, I was like, I didn't double. I actually went down. I was like, he's like, didn't you start a whole new business? And I was like, yeah. He's
Yeah.
like, it's okay that you didn't double. I'm like, okay. So to me, like, it's not so much like a project or anything like that. It's the idea that I was told forever that, even before chiropractic, artists don't make any money. Like, you're going to be a starving artist, all this stuff. And
Yeah.
everyone told me this. But if you think about how social media has changed the game for everything, you can make your own destiny. And you can,
Absolutely.
and it's not like a lot of people think, oh, woe is me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like my business isn't doubling. I was like, you know what? Let's change it up. Let's switch it up. It gives me kind of like this idea of I am in control of this.
Hmm.
Like I'm the person who's putting the social media out. Like I'm the one who can do this.
Yeah.
So I would say that the biggest success is being able to get that like little pat on the head and him being like, he's a very silent guy. So he's just like, and
Yeah,
I'm like,
it's that like nod of not acceptance, I would say, but like that, like you did it,
yeah,
like,
I did
yeah,
it. And
yeah,
I'm like, I'm kind of gearing up to really uh start releasing like new works again and start getting back into it. And I really am like, I in my head I think about it
Hmm.
because I used to work off of spite. I used to work off of screw you, I'm going to show you that I can
Yeah.
be a successful artist, or I can be a solo entrepreneur, chiropractor extraordinaire. And it's not very healthy to be running off of spite.
It gets the job done sometimes, but not long
Oh,
term. Yeah. Yeah.
it gets the job done. I mean, if it was like I would run off of that like toxic relationship, situationship, or whatever. I'd run off that for like years. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not healthy. That's not healthy at all.
Not really.
But I do feel like you can make anything happen.
Yeah.
And I always tell people this when they say artists, can't make any money. I'm like, if you take a student who goes through school to be a biology student to go for pre-med, because they'll say, I have an undergraduate degree in art history, and they're like, well, what good is
Mhm.
that? I'm like, what good is a biology degree? If you actually have to think about it, there's
It's
nothing you
very
can really do with
true.
it.
Very true.
I mean, it's the same thing. It's about
Yeah.
how you apply yourself
Yeah.
and how you take it and go forward. And I
Yeah.
think that, a lot of my friends, sure, they are all museum directors from back in the day, for sure. And or, teachers or whatever, but that's what they love to do. And I think in terms of going into chiropractic, the biggest thing for me that I realized was I initially, again, started out with like the idea of like, screw you, I'm going to do this. I'm going to create the best chiropractic business in the world. Now, I think what my biggest win has been and like excitement about it is my individual patients, because I have people that come in and I just want to help as many as I can and or direct them. Like I don't
Hmm.
specialize in functional medicine at all, but I have people that I direct them to. I'm like, here you
Yeah.
go. Let's go
Yeah.
through some testing. This is abnormal. And right now I have a patient who has EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And
Yeah.
so chiropractic and EDS is a very odd combo because they have hypermobility.
Yeah.
So being able to work with her and work on her muscles and strengthening and teaching her. And honestly, I am a bit of a therapist, but she is so like happy when she leaves my
Yeah.
office.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm like, okay, that is my win. Like
Yeah.
it might be a lot, but that is my win. And she gives me, I'm excited to treat patients like her
Mhm.
because if I can make a 20% difference in somebody who has chronic pain,
Yeah.
that is worth it to me.
It's
And
huge.
they are the most like grateful people. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm 20% better versus my other people who are like, oh, like
Yeah.
only 20% better. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's huge. Like,
I know. Sometimes you have to be that person to celebrate their wins or to show them
yeah,
that that is a win, because people are so in their heads a lot of the time, especially patients who are in pain, that they don't see things as a win because it quickly goes back to, oh, okay, everything's back to normal and pain and whatever, whatever.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Yeah. You're like, oh, just take it.
it's a win. But it does for me, I think just being able to help people. Like it
Yeah.
makes me like I get very bashful when somebody is like, "Oh my gosh, this is Dr. Sandy. She's my favorite. Oh my gosh, you saved me. Like she's the best."
Yeah.
I don't think I'm the best chiropractor by far. I have so much to learn, and I'm gonna be year 5 coming up.
Hmm.
So my parents have always said this to me, but when you receive a license, it's not a license to be. I didn't receive my license to be a chiropractor. I received my license to learn.
Yes.
So it's all about like not having that stagnation.
Yeah.
And I always tell people that's why I love active release, because I have to go every year to get recertified. And so it gives me
Hmm.
that like, I need to do this. And this year I'm doing a Webster seminar because as much as I don't love treating children so much because of active release is a little intense for kids, I do get my patients are, growing up and having kids, and
Yeah.
yeah, I do want to be the best that they can have and or refer them, but some
Yeah.
people, they're attached. So it's like they're like, "Well, can you do it?" I'm like, "Well, I really should get my
Yeah.
certification for this."
I feel the same way because I don't treat, like, my niche is not children,
Mhm,
but having taken like a lot of functional neurology classes with, I think he taught at Palmer, Dr. Michael
mhm,
Hall, I'm
yeah,
like, oh my God, I need to know about kids more. and I
Mhm.
need to understand. But yeah, you're always learning, you're always growing in the profession because you can't just stay still, right? You're going to be faced with another problem or another patient, and you're like, I should probably know how to treat you.
Yeah, I was like, I probably like my first pregnant woman came in, like I've seen her the whole pregnancy, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, I am learning. I am learning.
Yeah.
I'm going through my notes with her, and she knows that, and she's totally fine. She's like, no, I just,
Yeah.
she's I'll call you. I'll call you when I'm going to labor too. I was like, oh God, I don't think I'm prepared for
We're
that.
not there.
Yeah, I'm not there yet. It's like, but I do feel like working with people and having different populations come in,
Yeah.
I'm learning. I thought I wanted to just work with all athletes, and
Hmm.
that's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
I do love working with athletes, but working with these average Joe patients who are still athletic and they want to be better, I love those people.
Yeah.
And as somebody who had chronic pain and has chronic pain, I feel a lot for people who have chronic migraines and like my EDS patient, and just like her level of pain every day is insane. And they're just not studied. They're not acknowledged. And
Yeah.
so for me, I'd love to eventually become more of an expert in treating a particular like EDS specifically. It seems to
Hmm.
pop up in my life quite a bit. So I just from different people.
Yeah.
And I think that that would be something that I want to turn my career towards. And it just is a fascination.
Yeah.
Um, and being able to help. But it's to me, I think if I had to combine my wins in being an entrepreneur, I think running both my businesses has been the biggest. I never thought I could do this.
Hmm.
And we talked about this earlier, but one of the other things I'm looking at in the future is, can I do Wellco Chiropractic, Sandy Spines, and can I also have kids?
Yeah.
And I am like extremely nervous about this because I don't have anyone to do my patient load when I'm gone.
Yeah.
Um, what am I going to do? And like some people are okay with it. They're like, I'll see you whenever you get back, kind of thing. That's what I imagine will happen.
Yeah.
But I'm super worried about it. And the
Hmm.
Sandy Spines thing, the reason I've been like, maybe I really need to push that forward is because I'm like, well, I plan on having kids in the next 3 to 5 years.
I need money still for my
You know,
kids.
still. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, right? And I'm like, I'm never gonna be I'm never gonna be a fully work from home mom, or I'm never
Yeah.
gonna be a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
I always say this, I was like, my kids would be murdered probably. I don't think it's a good idea.
Mom's at her office.
Like, don't talk to me. Um, but and my friends will always laugh at me because they're like, you with kids? Because I'm like historically, like my best friend just had she's a 4-month-old baby, and I was like talking to him like a normal kid,
Yeah.
like a normal adult, and she's like, he's 4 months old. I was like, oh, whatever. Like
It's a sponge. It's fine.
it's fine. I was like, stop pterodactyling. You're fine. Like you're okay. Like shh. Shh. But my friends all the time, they're just like I think I'll be a good mom.
Hmm.
Um, I am concerned about how I will feel with that transition,
Yeah.
and the guilt and everything like that. So that's something that I think that I'll be proud of that in a few years, but I'm currently like, oh my.
You know what? My business is my baby. You have two, I have one, and a
Mhm.
few others, like a few
Yep.
step babies in
Yep.
there too. But you know what? I totally can agree and I can totally relate to that because there's this fear of the unknown, whether it be motherhood for us or whether it just be something else in the future, whether
Mhm.
it is business related or relationship related. And I think for everyone, there's just that like, what if? But I
Mhm.
read this beautiful quote and it keeps popping up on my Instagram. So I truly believe that the universe is just sending me messages.
Yeah.
It's like fear is what if, and then faith is even if. And I'm just like,
Mhm.
okay, thank you so much.
I
Like
like that.
it just really like grounds me again. It's like, you know what? Even if I have a baby and I
Mhm.
can't be at work, I know things will still be okay. It'll work itself
Right.
out, right? And it's just having that mentality, which is so hard to
Mhm.
really ingrain because our brains, as we know, they're so wired towards survival, which is negative. Like, what if, what
Mhm.
if? But I
Mhm.
think having that mentality in the back of my mind helps me a lot. And
Yeah.
it's just, yeah, just we'll get through this. We will do it. But
Yep.
yeah.
And it's such a discussion. Like I have that discussion with my fiance all the time, and
Hmm.
I'm just like, the kids are reliant on you, right?
Of
Like
course.
you are food. You
Yeah.
are like body
Cool.
vessel,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, we have conversations about when we want to have kids. And I said, I am not like in any state of mind to have a
Hmm.
child in the near future. Like, and I said, I need like a couple more years because I just want to be growing my business and
Yeah.
I have my baby and I've got a dog and I'm good right now. And
Yeah.
I want to figure it out. But it did stress me out because I thought to myself, I have to hire. I have to hire and
Yeah.
I have to grow and I got to hit this 10x number and all this. I was like, oh, but what if I don't?
Yeah,
What
yeah,
if,
exactly. Like, what
yeah,
will happen? Like, if anything, another opportunity might present itself to you,
yeah.
and it might just be the thing that takes you off and gets you to
Mhm.
that next dimension, right?
Yeah, and I always said, if I open my an office space and bring in people, like I do want to do that genuinely.
Yeah.
It may not happen in the next 5 years, it may happen in 10 years. I always think back to how my mom, as a veterinarian, I mean, she has a business partner and they both own 50/50,
Hmm.
but she was 50 when she bought the land to build her clinic. And it is a massive clinic. It
Yeah.
is. It's
She has
everything you ever
35
want.
employees. It's amazing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
35 employees. Like, I mean, it's massive. And I thought to myself, you were 50.
Yeah.
50. I'm
Yeah.
30.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm okay. Like,
Yeah.
when
There's
she
no
was,
timeline.
yeah, when she was my
Yeah.
age, she was graduating and she was like
Yeah.
going out to California to work. And then I think to myself, I was like, okay, I'm fine. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, I don't have to get right there right now. And a lot of what I feel, especially living in Florida, there's a lot of movement down here. There's a lot of
Hmm.
people that moved in the area. And I felt a fear like, oh, I have to do this before somebody else comes and does it.
Mm, yeah.
And now I don't really feel that so much. I'm like, oh, if somebody comes and does it, then I feel like, oh, check, they did it. Like, I
Yeah.
don't have to.
Well, thank God they did
Thank
it.
God somebody did it. I'm like, I'll be a member or I'll be there all the time. But I'm kind of the thing that I'm focusing on for the rest of quarter three, quarter four.
Hmm.
I'm I'm really trying to focus on building out my social circle to really fuel that.
Hmm.
And I also feel that I need to be a little bit more vulnerable. I feel that vulnerability is the way you connect with others, and
Yeah.
everybody always wants to be this like stoic, I'm perfect, everything.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's how you should do it. I don't think that's real for people. Um, but I'm trying to be very vulnerable with others and say, this is what I want. And some people are like, don't share your ideas. And I was like, if people want to steal my ideas, that's fine.
Yeah.
You still won't have the me. So,
Exactly. Exactly. It's you who makes it
Mhm.
what it is because it has that unique sandy charm or
Right,
flavor, right? So,
right.
yeah.
It's exactly the same thing. And I feel that I'm looking for my community at the moment and I'm
Hmm.
looking to build that out. And eventually, a lot of people have said, well, you should really utilize Sandy Spines to help you like promote and bring in like younger people to work with you. And I said, I will eventually.
Yeah.
And that'll be part of my, hiring process. But a lot of it comes down to, for me, it's like, I don't, I want this large dream, but I
Yeah.
need to start this, I'm really happy and I'm working on my own health. I'm working on my own hormones. I'm like trying to get all of this, situated where I can be fully present into whatever step I take next.
Hmm.
But I'm not, I don't feel tied down to anything at the moment.
Yeah.
So
And I think
that's
that's
where
really
I'm happy.
beautiful. I think that's really
Yeah.
beautiful because then it gives you that ability to have that flow go through
Mhm.
you and you don't feel like, oh my God, no, I'm supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be there. Like, okay,
Yeah.
let's go there now. Let's see how that goes. I
Yeah.
think that's wonderful.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
where I'm at. I'm enjoying it. It was stressful at first and now I'm like,
Yes. Because it's different. It's change. Yeah.
yeah.
Your body's like, what's going on?
Yeah, and we didn't really have a chance I feel like we didn't have a chance to enjoy like post grad life
Yeah.
necessarily, especially with COVID. And I had all these travel plans, and now I'm
Me
like
too.
finally able to do that. I'm like, okay, like
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Bye.
building the business at the moment. I'm gonna build it, but it's a slow growth. Like I'm
Yeah.
going for slow growth, not crazy incline here. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm at, and I tell people all the time, it's like just take it one step at a time. It's
Yes.
fine.
I think that's it. One step at a time, and then it will lead you to that big, beautiful picture of that clinic or that business or
Mhm.
that experience that you really, really wanted.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Exactly. That's where I'm at.
absolutely. Dr. Sandy, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was such a pleasure chatting with you, finally
Yeah.
meeting you in person, not just over social media, but I love your content. My patients love your pictures as they hang in my office, and just keep doing what you're doing. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. And thank you everyone for tuning in to today's episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you at the next one. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of the Dr. Celia Corbo Show. If you want to learn how to work with me one-on-one and achieve your best quality of life through the 3 pillars of health, then click the link below to schedule your free health assessment call and receive my free masterclass all about the 3 pillars of health: the physical, chemical, and the emotional. I look forward to chatting with you very soon.